Well, here we are back at the very end of Magna Carta. And, how do you keep all this? I mean, we've been through over the last few videos the all of these rights, all of these processes to protect your rights. But there's some underlying things um, that make essentially Magna Carta work, or the ideas of Magna Carta work. Uh, the first of those, of course, is found in the very first clause of Magna Carta. The English Church shall be free and shall have its rights undiminished and its liberties unimpaired. Now, this is not freedom of religion. That's that's something which would be is way off in the future. Um, but the English Church shall be free and shall have its rights undiminished and its liberties unimpaired. Um, you know what? If the church is not under the control of the government, then it can criticize the government. One of the things, even during the most strict days of the Soviet Union, even during the strictest days of Stalin, there was still kind of a church, only it was under control of the government. This says that the church is free and that it's not part of the government, and that therefore it can, and believe me, it will criticize the government. So this is an important thing here. A spiritual force outside the government, able to criticize the government, and very important to them. Article 61. We give and grant to the barons the following security. The barons shall elect 25 members of their number to keep and cause to be observed with all their might the peace and liberties granted and confirmed to them by this charter. So you have a security council watching the king. This is going to be a little bit like the United States Senate. There is a check and balance, a number of checks and balances in the U.S. Constitution imposed by the Senate. For instance, the president needs 2/3 of the Senate to make a treaty. The president, in order to have cabinet members and other high officials, has to have the approval of the Senate. And so essentially you have this security body in the U.S. Senate, and here you have a security body. Says Magna Carta, if we offend in any respect against any man or transgress any of the articles of peace and the offenses made known to us, they shall come to us to declare and claim immediate redress. So, it takes force. It doesn't take all 25, it takes 4. And so they come to the king and they say, oh, we got a problem here. And if the king blows them off, and he says, well, if we make no redress within 40 days, the 4 barons shall refer the matter to the rest of the 25 barons who may, and I love the medieval phrase here, distrain upon and assail us in every way possible. Who does it? It's not the 25 barons alone. It's the entire community. So that would include everybody, barons, clergy, dukes, knights, clear down to serfs. Everybody is essentially English. So you're English first, and you're a subject of the king second. And this was what was going on. This was what people had in their heads. It just had never been made clear before. And now the idea is you're English first, and then you're a subject of the king. You're a member of the United States first. You're a citizen of the United States or inhabitant of the United States. And then you come under a particular form of government. And how do you sell a king? Well, you attack their castles, lands, possessions, until the king cries uncle. And having secured their redress, they may then resume their normal obedience to us. So once you have affirmed what is essentially the English Constitution, then you can come under the form of government known as kingship. In the US, this would be a return to normal constitutional processes. Everyone is obligated to enforce the law. any man who so desires, any man. Again, so that would go clear down to serfs, or to the parish priest or whoever, may take an oath to obey the commands of the 25 barons for the achievement of these ends, and to join with them in assailing us to the utmost of his power. And then the king says, and the king is recognizing that England exists above the king. We give public and free permission to take this oath to any man who so desires. And at no time will we prohibit any man from taking it. So the king can't come back on you for taking an oath to obey the 25 barons. Indeed, if you take a look at the next line, we will compel any of our subjects who are unwilling to take it to swear to it at our command. So the king, so essentially, the king is not going to do this. The king can say, and the king is required to say, those people who are revolting against us, you have to join them and revolt against us. Again, it's a recognition that England exists above the king. The laws of England, the Constitution of England, exist above the king. And that, as with the president, the king is under England, under the law, under the Constitution. And so the Bill of Rights does basically the same thing that Magna Carta does, and of course is derived directly from Magna Carta. It's an ultimate set of checks and balances. And if you take a look here at the First Amendment to the U.S. Constitution, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. It's now we do have freedom of religion, but more than that is there's no establishment of religion. So religion is, for those who are religious, you don't have to be religious, but for those who are religious, religion is an important check and balance on the government. How are you going to go talk to the barons? Well, you're going to have freedom of speech. The U.S. Bill of Rights recognizes freedom of speech. Oh, they didn't call it freedom of speech back in the medieval period, but yeah, it's the same idea. Or the press. That's how you express things. Nowadays, we don't live in a small kingdom. We live in a huge country. And press, the media, what have you, very important to carry across ideas that the government may be doing right or wrong. Or the right of people to peaceably assemble. How are you going to prevail upon the barons if you don't, if you're just one person, you're probably not going to prevail. But if you're an entire community and you assemble together and you say to one of the barons, we got a problem. Well, the right to peacefully assemble and to object to what government is doing is one of the, profound rights of the U.S. Constitution and of the English inheritance that stems down from Magna Carta, and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. That's what you do when you go to the barons. You petition. The United States government is not allowed to, and state governments are not allowed to turn down petitions. They have to accept them. Now, they don't have to pay any attention to them, but they at least have to accept them. From the Fifth Amendment, nor shall a person be deprived of life, liberty, or property. We've already seen that above in previous videos without due process of law. Nor shall private property be taken for public use without just compensation. We did an entire video on this. Again, on the subject of compulsion. Can't do it. You have, if you're going to use private property for public ends, you have to pay for it. In all criminal prosecutions, the accused shall enjoy the right to a speedy and fair public trial. To no one will we deny, to no one will we delay right of justice. Right comes right out of Magna Carta, and by an impartial jury, and to have the assistance of counsel. Again, the assistance of counsel, a professional judiciary. Again, that's guaranteed in Magna Carta. Nor excessive fines be imposed, nor shall cruel and unusual punishments be inflicted. Again, in Magna Carta, it says at least twice that the crime has to fit the punishment. You just can't go out and do terrible things to somebody for a minor offense. And so, how do you enforce all of this? Well, you have to be able to restrain and assail the government. And this is something which, well, it's unpleasant. It led to a civil war.
but it's essential to the government to maintain the government. If the government has weapons, and governments always have weapons, and you don't, you're a second-class citizen right there. It's a question as to whether the people have a government or whether the government has people. And, you can always think about what would happen if 6 million Jews had been armed when Hitler came to power. So in order to restrain a government, you have to be able to, I'm sorry to tell you this, you have to be able to restrain an assailant. How do you do that? In an age where you have guns, they had arrows and spears and pikes and stuff like that back then, you have to be able to possess guns. Here, this is often misread, a well-regulated militia. In those days, a militia was considered to be part of a community. And for instance, after Washington defeated the British at Trenton and Princeton, almost all of New Jersey rose up, private individuals, and attacked the British and the Germans, and essentially reclaimed freedom for New Jersey. That's how it works. It wasn't a National Guard in the sense of thing. National Guards today are very discrete units. In those days, a militia was part of the community. It was a broad, spread out, touching much of most of people's lives in some way or the other, and it shall not be infringed. And the American Constitution was written, the American Bill of Rights was written 1790, 1791. The Pennsylvania Constitution was written in 1790, and in its Bill of Rights, it says in Section 21, and it makes it clear because some of the people who wrote the U.S. Constitution also wrote the Bill of Rights, Pennsylvania Bill of Rights, that the right of citizens to bear arms in defense of themselves, so self-defense, but notice this next one, and the state. That's exactly what is being said in Magna Carta, Bill of Rights, is you are defending the state against the king. So here you're defending the state against, I don't know, an oppressive president, an outside force, who knows? But the right to bear arms in the state of Pennsylvania shall not be questioned. And so this is basically how, rights are obtained. It's a due process. Outside voices such as the church, communication, assembly, petition, free press. These things are all implied in Magna Carta, even if they would not be recognizable to the people who wrote it. The right to restrain and assail a government or an invader or something like that. All of these things are important in terms of putting together a government that is restrained from harming its own people. Sometimes the peasants have to revolt, and that's the way it is. But hopefully, before that time, the elements of church or community or press or assembly, petitions, will stop that type of thing from having to happen. All right, everybody out there, stay calm, take care, be safe, and everybody stay healthy. Okay, good luck.